Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah.
We love getting your questions, and it seems like a lot of you are really wrestling with this whole idea of ethical money, especially when it comes to loans. We're seeing more and more folks feeling the pressure of those monthly payments, wondering if there's a way to do things differently, maybe even a little more fairly.
It's really interesting to see how much confusion is out there around this concept of Riba. Even people who think they've got a handle on it often get tripped up when you start digging into the specifics.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem is that it's so deeply embedded in our financial systems. Like almost everywhere you look, but often we don't even recognize it.
Exactly. It's like it's become the water we swim in. But that's why we're doing this deep dive, right? To really get to the bottom of this thing. We've got this incredible in-depth report all about Riba in Islamic finance. And don't worry, you definitely don't have to be a scholar to follow along.
No, not at all. We're going to break it down in a way that makes sense even if you're hearing about this for the first time. So we're going to explore what Riba actually is, the different forms it takes, and this is the really interesting part. We're going to get into why it's seen as a problem in Islamic tradition.
And one of the things that people are often most surprised to learn is that practices they consider completely normal, like taking out a loan from a bank, could actually fall under the definition of riba.
So let's just jump right in and define it. Get that out of the way, clear up any confusion. What is Riba?
All right, so according to our report here, riba basically means any increase in debt that's based solely on the amount of time that passes.
So it's like you get penalized for needing a bit more time to pay back what you borrowed. Doesn't seem quite fair when you put it that way.
You got it. And it's not like we're just talking about a few extra bucks here or there. This principle, it has some really big implications. It makes us rethink the whole way we approach borrowing and lending money.
Now, this report breaks down Riba into two main types. And I had to say the second one really threw me for a loop.
Well, let's start with the one that's probably more familiar, Riba al-nasi'ah. This is that classic situation where you take out a loan and the lender, they tack on an extra amount depending on how long the loan is for. So the longer it takes you to pay it back, the more you owe in the end.
Okay, so that's the interest we always hear about, right?
Right. Now, the second type, Riba al-fadl, this one is a bit trickier. It's about exchanging things that are the same type but different in quality, and you do it in unequal amounts. Imagine you have this amazing, perfectly ripe mango, and someone wants to trade you for it, but they're offering two larger mangoes that are still kind of green and unripe.
On the surface, it looks like you're getting more, but are you really?
That's the question. Because the difference in quality, that's where the unfairness comes in.
It's like they're trying to take advantage of that quality difference to get a better deal, right?
Yeah.
You got it. And that brings us to the really important principle here, the idea of fairness in exchange. Both types of riba, they point to this idea that one person shouldn't gain an unfair advantage over the other in a financial transaction.
Okay, so that makes sense, but let's get into the WHY here. Why is riba forbidden in Islam? This report doesn't just say it's a rule. It actually lays out some really strong reasons that go way beyond just religious doctrine.
Absolutely. The thing is, the prohibition of riba, it comes from a deep concern for social justice and economic equity. It's all about building a system that safeguards the vulnerable and stops people from taking advantage of others.
So it's not just about blindly following rules. It's more about the values and the effects these practices have on individuals and the whole society.
Exactly. And one of the biggest reasons riba is seen as problematic is that it upsets the balance of justice and equity in financial dealings. Think about it. When you have a transaction based on riba, the lender is making a profit, but they're not sharing in any real risk.
So they're profiting from someone else's needs, potentially taking advantage, especially when folks are already struggling.
Yeah, and that can be a form of exploitation, right?
We've heard from a lot of our listeners who feel stuck in these cycles of debt, where they're just struggling to keep up with interest payments that seem to grow faster than they can pay them off.
Unfortunately, that's a story we hear all too often. But that's precisely the kind of situation that the prohibition of riba is designed to prevent. The whole idea is to create a system where financial transactions are built on real partnership, where everyone shares in the risk, rather than one person benefiting while the other one bears all the burden.
It's wild how riba can create this power imbalance that ends up hurting the borrower. But the report goes even deeper, right? It says this isn't just some personal finance issue. It can actually mess with the entire economic system.
Yeah, that's actually one of the most interesting parts of this whole discussion. This idea that prohibiting riba isn't just about individual ethics, it's about creating a more stable and just economic system overall.
So how does that work? How does riba impact the bigger picture, the economy as a whole.
Well, think about it this way. When the main way to make money is focused on interest and piling up debt, it encourages people to get involved in activities that are more about speculation than actually producing anything of value.
So instead of investing in things that make a real difference, like starting businesses, creating new products, or providing essential services, the focus shifts to just making money from money.
You got it. And that can cause a whole bunch of problems. For one thing, it can lead to these economic bubbles that grow too fast and then boom, they burst and everybody loses. It can also lead to wealth getting concentrated in the hands of just a few people, while most folks are out there struggling to get by.
That sounds a lot like the inequality we're seeing in so many places these days.
It's definitely a big part of the problem. And it's not just about the gap between the rich and the poor. This Riba thing, it can actually stifle innovation and prevent people from becoming entrepreneurs. If the easiest way to make money is by lending it out with interest, there's less motivation for people to take risks and invest in new ideas that could benefit everyone.
So we're talking about this vicious cycle where Riba contributes to inequality, it holds back innovation, and then the whole economy becomes less stable.
Oh.
Okay, I see why that's a problem. But the report doesn't just complain about it, it talks about solutions. It points to Islamic finance specifically.
Now we're getting to the good stuff. Islamic finance, it's like this whole different approach to thinking about money. It wants to make sure that financial transactions line up with ethical principles, and that includes this whole idea of prohibiting riba. And the cool thing is, it's not just some theory, it's a whole industry that's actually out there working with real products and services.
So it's not about just saying no to interest, it's about offering concrete alternatives, real solutions,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. There are a bunch of different models and approaches within Islamic finance, but they all have this common goal. They want to make sure that financial transactions are based on real economic activities. Everyone shares the risk, and there are these ethical considerations built in from the beginning.
Earlier we talked about some of those alternatives,
Mm-hmm.
things like sale-based financing, sharing-based financing, and lease-based financing. I'm curious, can you walk us through a real-life example of how these actually play out in practice?
Sure. Let's say you're thinking about buying a house, but you don't have enough money to pay for it all at once. In the conventional system, you'd get a mortgage from a bank and pay interest on that loan, right? But in Islamic finance, there are other options. One is called murabaha. In this model, the Islamic bank actually buys the house for you and then sells it back to you at a higher price, which you pay off gradually in installments. The bank makes a profit from the markup, but that markup is fixed right from the start, so there's no fluctuating interest to worry about.
So it's kind of like a rent-to-own situation.
In a way, yeah. Another option is called musharaka, and this one is all about partnership. In this case, the bank and the person buying the house, they team up to purchase the property together, and then they share both the profits and the losses when it eventually gets sold. This way, everyone shares the risk.
That sounds way fairer than just sticking the borrower with all the risk and all those interest payments.
Yeah.
Are these kinds of alternatives just for big purchases like buying a house, or can they be used for other things too?
No, not at all. Islamic finance, it has this whole range of products and services, everything from basic bank accounts and savings to investment funds and insurance. And it's not just for individuals either. There are options for businesses of all sizes and even government projects. It's really designed to be a comprehensive alternative to the conventional system.
So Islamic finance is trying to offer this whole different way of looking at things, but it also sounds pretty complex. Is it something that ordinary people can actually access and understand?
You know, that's a great question, and it's something the Islamic finance industry is working hard to address. In the past, some of these products might have seemed only for people who really knew Islamic law inside and out, but that's changing fast.
So it's becoming more mainstream, more accessible.
Yes, people are starting to understand Islamic finance as a real ethical alternative, and institutions are putting a lot of effort into making their products and services easier to understand and use. There are all these new fintech solutions and online platforms popping up, plus a ton of educational resources that are helping people get a handle on Islamic finance. It's definitely becoming more accessible to everyone.
It sounds like Islamic finance isn't just about following religious rules. It's really about creating a more just and sustainable system for everyone.
That's at the core of it. And what's exciting is that this movement is getting bigger and bigger all over the world. People from all sorts of backgrounds are seeing the ethical and practical benefits of Islamic finance. And it's really making us think differently about money and how we use it.
This whole deep dive has been really eye-opening. We've gone from the nitty-gritty of Riba to this big picture stuff about our economies and societies.
And we've explored how Islamic finance can actually offer a way forward, not just for Muslims, but for anyone who wants to manage their finances in a more ethical and just way.
Wow. We've really covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the specifics of Riba to the bigger picture of how our economic systems work. But I think the thing that's really sticking with me is this idea that we actually have a lot of power as individuals. Like, when it comes to our money, we can make choices that really matter.
I couldn't agree more. This isn't just some theoretical discussion. It's about taking what we've learned and using it to make choices that align with what we believe in.
We've gotten so many messages from listeners who are dealing with debt, feeling like they're stuck in these loan situations that just aren't fair. It's pretty clear that the way our financial system is set up right now isn't working for everyone.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, this concept of riba, it really resonates. It's like a light bulb moment. They start to realize that some of the things we've been taught about money, especially when it comes to borrowing and lending, might not be as ethical or sustainable as we thought.
So what can we actually do about it? Because it can feel kind of overwhelming. It's like, how do you even begin to challenge a system that's so deeply rooted?
Well, the first step is awareness, right? Once you understand what riba is and why it's considered a problem, that's when you can start making different choices. You can start asking questions about the loans you're considering, look into the ethical side of your investments, and see what alternatives are out there, like Islamic finance.
It's really inspiring to see that Islamic finance isn't just about avoiding what's seen as harmful. It's about actively creating a system that's more just and equitable. It's about promoting partnerships where everyone benefits, sharing the risks, and making sure that financial gains come from real economic activities, not just moving money around.
That's what makes this movement so interesting. It's not just about saying no to something, it's about building something better in its place.
And what's really encouraging is that you don't have to be a financial whiz or a scholar to get involved. There are tons of resources out there now to help people learn about Islamic finance. You can find ethical financial products and services and make choices that actually reflect your values.
Even if you're not quite ready to make a complete switch, just understanding the principles we've talked about can make a difference in how you handle your money. You can choose to support businesses that operate in a transparent and ethical way. You can ask your bank about investment options that align with your ethics. You can take the time to learn about the impact your financial decisions have. Every step we take, no matter how small, it all adds up to a more just and equitable financial system for everyone.
It's a good feeling knowing that we have choices and that our choices can actually make a difference.
Absolutely. It's about taking back control of our finances and using that power to do something good.
What a great way to wrap things up. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Riba and Islamic finance. We hope you've learned a lot and maybe even feel inspired to explore some of those alternatives that resonate with your own values. Remember, making informed choices about our money. That's something we can all do, and it really does matter. Until next time, keep on exploring, keep on learning, and keep on diving deeper.